This is Polyamory Weekly for September 12th, 2005. Coming up on this week's show, Masturbate-a-thon, and Dossie Easton and Janet Hardy answer the tough questions. After gay marriage, will there be more sex with goats? Will there be an ethical slut too? And more on radical ecstasy. All coming up on this week's Polyamory Weekly. Hello and welcome to Polyamory Weekly. I am your host, a very tired minx because I have a very long show with a client this week that is sapping most of my energy. However, we still got the second half of the interview with Janet Hardy and Dossie Easton coming up today, so yay. First, a warning for our under 18 listeners. This is an adult-oriented podcast about really lascivious things like communication and honesty in relationships. If you're under 18 and looking for upfront advice and answers to questions about sex, please visit www.scarletteen.com and turn off your iPod now. Okay, a few announcements before we dive right into the interview, or the rest of the interview with Janet Hardy and Dossie Easton. First, wanted to make a couple of quick announcements. And once again, next week we're going to get back to our regular format with all the listener mail that's been stacking up. Got lots of great topics and comments. It's going to be really fun next week. But just a few quick announcements this week. First, I wanted to mention there is an event coming up in Chicago called Kinky College. The website is www.kinkycollege, that's college with a K.com. And I mention it because Grey Dancer and myself are going to be there. And it is the last weekend in September, first weekend in October, and we are going to be there attending all the seminars. I'm not working, but Grey Dancer is volunteering, doing something. So if you're in the Chicago area and want to meet the Minx and Grey Dancer, that's where we'll be. Another quick note, for all the perverts who are always asking to see Minx naked. What do you look like? Where are your pictures, Minx? Well, for those of you who don't already subscribe to Rogue Weekly, if you want to see a video of Minx naked, or mostly naked, and wielding a ridiculously large sword, as well as the lovely Genevieve, also naked and upside down, the lovely Genevieve, au naturel, and in an inverted suspension, I am providing a link on the show notes page at www.livejournal.com/users/polyweekly. I am providing a link to the Rope Weekly vidcast from a few weeks ago that Grey Dancer created and put up about these events that happened at Shibari Treat. So it's just a couple-minute video that's really fun if you want to see, naked people. And on a little bit more serious of a note, you might have noticed that I have not mentioned Katrina at all on this podcast. And you can criticize me for this, if you will. My reaction to tragedy is generally to feel very helpless, and I wasn't sure about the best way to address this issue. I think I've kind of been in denial. Like, I know I should do something, but sort of what the heck can I do except to say, go to redcross.org and donate. So 2 things I wanted to mention. First of all, my lovely and adorable sweetie came up with a really great idea. He is running a Rope Weekly blood drive. And you can find out more about that at www.greydancer.com/ropeweekly. And he's running a great blood drive where if you go in and donate blood, and you can donate anywhere, it doesn't have to be at a Christian organization. It just needs to be a charitable donation of blood. If you take a picture of yourself giving blood and email it to him at greydancer@gmail.com, then his associates, Rainbow Rope, will send you a 15-foot length of red rope for free. So even if you're not kinky, hey, red rope is pretty, maybe you can do something else with it. So I thought I would mention that, and of course those details will be provided on the show notes section as well. And I have to thank G to writing in for me because, this is one of those where I don't know if it's a man or a woman. I love it when this happens. I think it's a man. I'll call him he. G wrote in to say, it sounds like he's feeling kind of the same as I am. He wrote in to say, "Hi there, Minx. I'm a fairly new listener to your show, about 3 weeks now, trying to catch up from the archives as best I can. I'm writing you to ask if you'd mention an effort of mine in your next show. I live in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and have been witnessing the devastation and despair wrought by Katrina. I tried to think of a way that I could help and at the same time raise spirits and contribute some positive energy. This is what I came up with. The idea is to have a weekend-long masturbate-a-thon to raise money for the Red Cross and other organizations helping the post-Katrina relief efforts. If you could give us a bit of publicity, it would be greatly appreciated. For one weekend, it is all about the sex with ourselves. Well, gee, I think that's a great idea that I feel I can actually get behind and contribute. So, the website is www.touchyourself.org. So, if you click on the link, how's this work and how can I help? I suppose the main thing you want to know is what exactly is a masturbate-a-thon? And on the website, they explain it's sort of like a walk-a-thon. So, the participants in the drive sign up on our message board, which is on the website. That's www.touchyourself.org, promising to spend as much time as possible masturbating on the weekend of October 14th through 16th, 2005. And this will be really funny if I happen to be working for a client or something that weekend. And people read their post and reply, pledging an amount at their discretion for every minute or hour the participant spends masturbating that weekend. So at 5 p.m. Friday, October 14th, 2005, the participants start keeping track of exactly how long they spend touching themselves. At the end of the weekend, they report back in their thread on the message board to let all the people who pledged to them know how much time they spent playing solitaire. And he mentions this is on the honor system. Once the pledgers tally up the amount they owe, it's up to them to send that in to the appropriate organization. And there are several listed on the left side of this page. And there are links provided to the Center for Sex and Culture, America's Second Harvest, Good Vibrations, the Humane Society, I Come in Peace, and the American Red Cross. So you can choose the organization that works best for you. And I really like that we're donating directly to the organizations. I wouldn't have been comfortable if it was, send it to me and I'll send it to blah, that sort of thing. So you donate directly to the organization based on how many minutes or hours. I got to tell you, in my case, I'm going to go ahead and register. In my case, it's probably going to be minutes because I can masturbate myself to orgasm in the 2-minute commercial break on TV. How pathetic is that? Well, that's with the right motivation, of course. So, yes, I am on board. Go check out www.touchyourself.org if it's your thing. If it's not, go ahead and volunteer your time, donate blood, do whatever is going to work for you. Okay, all that being said, let's get on to the fun part, the continuation of the interview with Janet Hardy and Dossie Easton, post-Ohio Leatherfest. So to switch topics a little bit, this question was submitted by a great answer. Hi, great answer. It was predicted by the conservatives that the legalization of gay marriage would lead to a rise in sex with goats. What do you think the effect of legalized polyamory would have on the goat population?
I was about to say, if we legalize polyamory, does that mean there will be a rise in goat orgies?
I believe goats are already polyamorous, actually. There's a wonderful book written by a friend of mine called The Myth of Monogamy, which talks about non-monogamy in the animal world. So if you really want the answer to that question, you should read The Myth of Monogamy.
Written by?
Judith Lipton and David somebody. I can't remember her partner's last name.
There is a serious answer to your question. And I think that if you look at like the Kinsey statistics about the number of people who actually do have sex with barnyard animals of various kinds, it's a lot higher than I personally, being a city girl, would have dreamed. I mean,
really?
For a lot of young people, this is their initiation to sex. And ideally, if we got our way rather than the conservatives getting theirs, we would live in a world where sex was not demonized and where it was more available to people. And we would get to a point where the only people who felt like they wanted to have sex with goats were those who actually preferred goats, which I suspect would be a minority. I think offered the choice between a human and a goat as a sex partner. The majority of people would probably choose the human. And we would like to live in a world where there were humans available for this, and you didn't have to resort to ghosts.
Yeah, we're really looking at how do we get into a world of sexual abundance.
Yes.
So much of our culture is defined. You know, when they talk about monogamy as being part of the stability of marriage, what they're really saying is you make sex really hard to get. You can only have sex under these unbelievably circumscribed conditions. And so everybody's starving. Everybody is hungry. And everybody winds up feeling not good enough over what is frankly an almost universal fact that the life partnership relationship that a good marriage is, the part about working and building a home and raising kids and getting them through college and all that other kind of practical, wonderful stuff is not the sexiest thing in the world. It's not about that kind of sexual passion. And I work with tons and tons of long-term couples about, you know, what are the ways that one goes about keeping that passion alive or rediscovering it. It's actually a process of making time and space in your life to rediscover that passion. But the truth is that for most people, it's not just lesbians who experience bed death, you know? Mm. And so this keeping the whole country in a state of sexual starvation is a lot what are called untruthfully traditional values are about. Hmm. It's not true that monogamy is that traditional a value.
No argument from me.
Mm-hmm. But in closing, let me just say that
okay.
No, I don't think that gay marriage would result in an increased incidence of sex with goats.
Okay, we have that on the record now. Good.
Yes.
I don't know
no
why
way to turn the moon into green cheese, you know?
I don't know why it is the conservatives that the second you say gay marriage, poly marriage, you know, let's acknowledge different lifestyles. The first place they go is, well, if we do that, then sex with goats. I don't know why that's the first place they go all the time.
What astonishes me about these people is how much filthier their minds are than ours.
Thank you.
You know, they tell us loud and clear what it is they would do if the restrictions were lifted.
The first place they go is goats.
Yeah, they would have to go have some sex with some goats because there's nobody telling them they're not allowed to. Whereas, you know, nobody has ever told me I can't have sex with goats, to my recollection. The urge has never taken me.
You know, as long as it's consensual on the part of the goat, I have no problem with it.
Well, you get into some really dicey questions about what exactly informed consent is on the part of a goat. I'm not quite ready to go there.
I don't think
anyway,
I am
let's get
either.
to the serious question.
Okay.
Well, there is a serious question in there, which is the other place everybody goes to when you talk about having social and legal values about being open about consensual sharing among adults of sex is the question of child molestation. Mm. And in all seriousness, once again, gay marriage is not going to increase the rate at which children are abused. It has nothing to do with that. But that's the other bugaboo everybody brings up. If we bring sex out in the open, then there will be more child molesters. And I don't believe that that's true. I believe that, once again, the image of that child molesting is a lot a consequence of our sick attitudes about sex and not a consequence of freedom and healthy sort of out in the light attitudes. Child abuse doesn't last long out in the light. It's all this very secretive stuff. I interviewed many years ago on the radio, 30 years ago, Hank Giarretto, who founded Parents United, an incest intervention group. And one of the things they found out was the molesting, mostly fathers and stepfathers, were often these kind of milquetoast guys. They were guys who weren't capable of going out and finding themselves a mistress or a sex worker or like that. that they were starving for a different reason. And I think that if we had a culture of abundance, frankly, I think the rate of child molestation would go down.
Okay, I'm not Christian, but I feel like saying amen.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So Miss Marty Pants wanted to ask, will there ever be an Ethical Slut 2? And if there would be, what would you change or include?
We are actually in the very, very early stages of working on a second edition of Ethical Slut. And we know some of the things that we want to include in it, but we're still very much in the sort of just kind of poking at it and see what jiggles kind of stage. We've had some requests for more information about conflict resolution, and so we'll probably have some information about that. We've had some requests for more information about coming out to families and accommodating families and coworkers. You know, we did When Someone You Love Is Kinky, but nobody has done When Someone You Love Is Poly. And so we'll probably have some sort of chapter or bit in there that's something you can use to help explain your poly lifestyle to the people around you. We'll probably have more information. We've come to believe that, as Dossie said, jealousy is not monolithic. It's a whole bunch of emotions that are different, but that we subsume under the category of jealousy. And so we want to give more detail about that, because we think it can be very helpful when you're feeling what you call jealous to try to get a little more specific about what's really going on. So those are some of the things that I think we've talked about including.
And we're planning a chapter called something like Sex in the Single Slut. Yeah. So much of what we write is kind of couple-centrist, and we want to write some about lifestyles that are not centered around a primary partnership.
And we do want to put a little bit more about BDSM in there, because we probably should have the first time around and didn't.
I'm always surprised when some of the listeners to Polyamory Weekly aren't into BDSM. I have to remind myself that. But I'm like, oh, yeah, there's some people that aren't kinky. And actually, there are a lot of monogamous listeners to the show, which I find very interesting. But what you said, the issue of coming out, we talk about that all the time on the show. Everybody has difficulties with coming out to kids, families, coworkers. Am I going to come out or not? I mean, we talk about that, it seems like every other week, of how to deal with coming out.
Well, yeah, look at the consequences. You could lose your job. You could lose your training. I had to be in the closet in order to get through an internship and get my license, because as a licensed psychotherapist, there was no way I was going to do that out of the closet. And if you're living in the mainstream culture and you basically get caught, what do you lose? You lose your marriage, you lose your children, you lose your house, you lose a goodly percentage of your income for the rest of your life. The consequences, as we have laid them out in our culture, are drastic.
They can be. They don't have to be, but they can be, yeah.
They can be, yeah.
Actually, Femme Fatale asked, how have your own approaches to poly evolved over the years? Because you guys have been poly for a long time.
What I've come to believe, I'm in a relationship right now that is what I dislike the whole sort of primary, secondary terminology that's become popular, but it's what most people would call a primary relationship. I tend to call it a life partner relationship. That is not first and foremost a sexual relationship. My partner has some physical disabilities that preclude a lot of kinds of sexual interaction that I would be that I would normally consider to be something I'd look for in a main squeeze, and that's just not there here. And what I've come to realize is that in the mainstream culture, we expect our life partner relationship to, I had at one point at least 5 things that we expect it to accommodate. And, sex and intimacy and romance and pair bonding and nesting and parenting. That's 6 right there. And we expect it to do all of those. And for me, what I've found is that I don't need all of those to come from the same place. I need them all, except for parenting, which, my kids are grown now. I don't intend to start anymore. But I need all of those in my life, but I don't need them all to come from the same place. And the relationship I have now is more about nesting and pair bonding and romance than it is about the other ones. And there are other people in my life that I can get the other ones from. Dossie and I have a sexual relationship. I have a couple of other sexual relationships. And I think that's what a lot of poly actually come to, is a culture that's recognized that that's too big an expectation to put on one relationship, to get all of those needs met in the same place, and that it's fine and it can work to get them all met in different places. Sorry?
I was thinking what I would say about that, because I developed a whole lot of my theory and understanding back in '69. When I decided I would never be monogamous again, I had also decided, as we described in Slut, that I would be non-monogamous for at least 5 years, that I was going to refuse to get partnered for 5 years, to find out who I am as a woman and to kind of find my strength. And so one of the things that has happened to me is that I have like most of us, I've had some long-term relationships in my adult life, and more than one, and none of them have lasted for 30 years, or I wouldn't have had so many of them. And I have also spent more than most people, probably about half my adult life, living as a single person with a kind of extended family, a tribe, most of people that I share intimacy and sex and, who drives who to the hospital when they need to have a little surgery or whatever, right? I mean, all that stuff is shared as an extended family or tribal kind of thing. So to me, the biggest development in that has been kind of on two ends, and one is to develop my self-sufficiency. I was raised as a young woman in the 50s to be such a clinging vine that it was very important to me to find my strength, and also to develop a community of people, an extended family, which we often call tribe or tribal thinking, with whom I can share all that stuff. And so that's been like something that has been developing over the past 35 years, and it really works for me.
I like that idea too, because I don't know if I never know if I'm single or not. But I like the idea of having a tribe. I call it my poly family because I'm not close to my own family. But having the poly family is as close to having a tribe or a family or people to drive me to the hospital as I've ever had. So that I very much associate. Although I live alone, I don't even live in the same city as my lovers. Just to make things, more complicated. Well, we've been on for almost an hour now, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time. So is there anything else either of you wanted to add? Is there anything you want to plug?
Oh, well, I want to. Can I put in a plug for Radical Ecstasy here?
Absolutely.
It's kind of funny. People heard that we were going to Columbus and said, well, you can't do this kind of Tantra stuff in the Midwest or in Ohio. So what? I've been doing this Tantra stuff. We've been doing this Tantra stuff in Tulsa, Oklahoma, all over the place. We did I led two wonderful workshops in opening up, for lack of a better word, spiritual energy that we write about in Radical Ecstasy, that everybody in the room, and I guess there were about 30 people or so in the room each time, just went into and had a wonderful time. And every time after we got through, when people could breathe again and talk again, which takes a little while, because we were doing a very ecstatic practice, an ecstatic experience, somebody would raise their hand and say, well, it feels just like the way I feel when we do SM. It feels like subspace, it feels like top space. It's like, right. It's this magic energy. Here's where I go a little pie in the sky, and Janet and I use very different language around this stuff. But I believe that the entire energy of the animating force of the cosmos, if you will, flows through all of us all the time, and that we just don't pay attention most of the time. And that when we open ourselves up to that, wonderful, wonderful stuff ensues, including, tremendous ecstasy and fabulous orgasms, and also a lot of wisdom and healing. And to me, that energy is sex. And Eros is the animating force of the universe in my book. I don't know how we got to some place where somebody decided that sex and spirit were antithetical to each other, were somehow opposed to each other or mutually exclusive, because I think that is wrong. Just plain not fact, not how it works. So we've been doing a lot of work everywhere. I've done them in England, in Canada, showing people just how far they can travel, wonderful energy that they will find inside them if they learn to open it up. And I think that SM players are travelers in that sense. I think we are all spiritual travelers on just levels of love, sharing love and self-awareness.
Is there a schedule of radical ecstasy workshops that I can point people to online? Because we do have listeners all over the world, Australia, Europe, everywhere.
We'll be doing Bash in
Austin, Texas, at the Gwyn Bash, the weekend of September 12th, I believe, 13th. The SM group in Austin is called Gwyn, group with no name, and they have their session that weekend, and we will be. Aside from that,
do we have is there information online?
I will be teaching solo in Vancouver for libidoevents.com in weekend of October. Did you get that?
Sorry, yeah, you. In the last just 2 minutes, you guys have been cutting out a lot. So do you want to repeat the bit about Austin and Vancouver? Just say that again.
Okay.
We'll be
teaching together. Okay. We'll be teaching together in at the Gwyn Birthday Bash in Austin, Texas, the second weekend in September. And then Dossie is teaching in Vancouver, and I'm sorry, Dossie, I missed the weekend.
October 15th.
Weekend in October 15th. Go ahead.
In Vancouver. The Gwyn Bash you'll find it on the web as GWNN, standing for Group with No Name. And the one in Vancouver is being put on by Libido Events.
Okay, that's what we have coming up in the immediate future. And beyond that, I'm sure we've got some things, but I don't have my calendar here in front of me. But, anybody who wants to know can write to me, care of Greenery Press, jhardy@greenerypress.com, and I can find out more about our schedules farther out in the future.
And anyone interested in radical ecstasy, of course, that is available through Greenery Press.
The website is at www.greenerypress.com. I just updated it this week. I'm very proud of it. And so anybody who is interested in any of our books or any of Greenery's books, which are all about alternative sexualities, should visit there and see what's up.
You should visit there anyway.
Well, yeah.
All right. I thank you so much, both of you, for getting up early on a Saturday and taking the time to share thoughts, feelings, and some really hot scenes and descriptions with us today. Any parting words you'd like to...
I wish we could have done it in person when we saw you in Ohio.
Oh, me too. But unfortunately, Great Wife Genevieve was taken to the hospital very early Sunday morning, so we had to split. But she is okay.
Oh, dear. I'm sorry.
Yes, and she's at Burning Man, actually, at the moment, so she's doing much better.
She's recovered pretty well. Okay, well, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. And thanks one more time to Janet and Dossie for taking the time to discuss all these very important issues like sex with goats. And we really do appreciate their taking the time out for the interview. Questions, comments, or feedback, always happy to hear from you at cunningminx, CUNNINGMINX @gmail.com, or why not give the listener comment line a buzz at 206-600-5677. Thanks for listening, everyone, and remember, it's not always about the sex.